Hello and welcome to the Crystal Palace podcast. I'm Alfonso Greenbrook and today for 31 I'll be looking at the result of Everton by bringing my match review, player rankings and my man of the match. As well as this, I'm also going to bring you an exclusive interview with Sam Allardyce and Jeffrey Schlupp after the game. So let's begin. Once again, Palace suffered late heartache as Seamus Coleman notched the only goal of the game 3 minutes from time to deny the Eagles a point. Sam Allardyce's side had come the closest during the game to opening the scoring, with Christian Benteke hitting the bar early on and Joel Robles making a marvellous save to deny Scott Dan. But the Toffees fullback stole a late winner to break the Eagles' hearts in controversial fashion, with Jeffrey Schlupp prone in the opposition box with cramp. Having scored twice in midweek against Bolton Wanderers, Benteke came so close to netting another just 8 minutes in, when a cross from the left by James McArthur was perfect for the Belgians' head, but the ball cracked off the crossbar and bounced unkindly for the oncoming Palace attackers. After surviving that scare, the visitors then enjoyed a good spell, as firstly Ross Barkley saw a fizzing left foot dive deflect wide, and a minute later Wayne Hennessy was called into action when Kevin Morales pulled the ball down and volleyed fiercely on the turn, but the Welshman managed to get 2 hands behind it and push it to safety, before he then tipped over a Barkley curler. The England midfielder then finally put the ball into the net on 34 minutes, when Gareth Barry nodded the ball into Romelu Lukaku, whose first time shot struck the bottom of the post and then bounced out to the unmarked Barkley. But fortunately for the Eagles, he was in an offside position, and after he tapped home the rebound, it was chalked off. Minutes after, Hennessy had to display some good reactions once again, when he managed to push away a top corner destined effort from Fuller's Murray, who had shown great composure in the area to fake a shot before actually pulling the trigger. But the Welshman wasn't to be beaten throughout the first 45 minutes, as the sides went into the break goalless. Barkley continued to be the biggest threat when play resumed, and he dragged a shot wide from a tight angle after a brilliant racking cross by Tom Davies set him free. And after Hennessy got down well to prevent Coleman attempting to break the deadlock, Barkley then pulled another shot wide of the opposite post. The chances kept falling to Ronald Koeman's side, and Lukaku nearly continued his fine goal-scoring form against the Eagles, but headed just over. And then Hennessy was forced to dirty his gloves again from Barkley as he tried one from distance. But after waiting patiently for another sight on goal, the Eagles finally got one with a quarter of an hour to go, when Jason Puncheon fired into the homestyle from the edge of the box. However, only a fine save from Joel Robles prevented the hosts from getting the lead, when James McArthur drew a free kick and Jason Puncheon whipped it to the head of Dan, but the Toffee stopper produced the save of the game to claw the ball away from the goal line, with an outstretched hand and frustrate Allardyce's side. And that proved vital, as with 3 minutes to go, the Eagles' resistance finally broke. With Schlupp down injured for a lengthy amount of time, play was allowed to continue, and Everton capitalised. With the left channel exposed, Davies played the ball to Coleman, who blasted the ball past the helpless Hennessy to snatch a win for the visitors, and still a potentially vital point out of Palace's grasp. This was a match that Crystal Palace could have won, and for Sam Allardyce and the fans in attendance, there was a sense of injustice that the team had nothing to show for their hard work. Palace were more organised than they've been in previous matches, but Seamus Coleman was given a free run down the left, with Jeffrey Schlupp crumbled in a heap at the opposite end of the pitch. It was all that Everton needed to take the points. Now for some positives from the game. A more coherent midfield combined with a more solid defence looked to be what was needed for Palace to get their first league clean sheet in months. Yohan Kabai's busy work in the midfield put Everton under constant pressure, while the back three of James Tonkins, Scott Dan and Damien Delaney kept an attack that scored 4 goals against Manchester City at bay for almost the whole game. Now for some negatives from the game. Ignoring the referee's refusal to stop the play when the ball went out for a throw-in with Schlupp injured, Allardyce will be disappointed at the way that Palace conceded the losing goal. Palace should have briefly adapted to the loss of Schlupp and should have cleared their lines better. They didn't, and the result was ever so predictable. The woe continued for Crystal Palace with a 1-0 defeat at home against Everton on Saturday afternoon. Palace suffered an 8th home defeat of the season in the league as they dropped into the bottom 3 of the Premier League thanks to Swansea City's surprise win at Liverpool in the early kick-off. But what do we learn from the game as Seamus Coleman struck a late winner for the Toffees? Here are 5 things we picked up. Number 1. Speroni is a firm favourite. He may not be playing often, but there is no doubting the special bond between goalkeeper Julian Speroni and the Crystal Palace fans. The Homesdale fanatics displayed a banner with one of his quotes from a recent interview before kick-off, and the 37-year-old's name was greeted with the biggest cheer when it was read out prior to kick-off. Number 2. Hennessy's impressive performance. The Crystal Palace goalkeeper made several key saves in the first half. The Welshman was on hand to deny Kevin Morales and Roberto Funes Mori with 2 superb stops, and he kept the Eagles in it when Everton threatened to open the scoring. He made a few saves in the second half too to keep the Toffees at bay, but was powerless to save the day as Coleman struck late on. Number 3. Solid start from Schlupp. Jeffrey Schlupp came in to make his full debut for Palace, and he put in a good shift down the left hand side. He covered a lot of ground and got stuck in, and it was a decent display from the Ghanaian, who won the Premier League with Leicester City last season. He had to go off with cramp late on, to be replaced by Andros Townsend. Number 4. Palace are now into the bottom 3. Despite their poor form in recent months, Crystal Palace has somehow avoided dropping into the bottom 3. That was until Swansea City pulled off the shock result of the afternoon in the lunchtime kick-off, winning 3-2 at Anfield to move them out of the relegation zone and put Palace into it. Although Sam Allardyce says that being in the bottom 3 makes no difference at all at this stage of the season. And number 5, a sucker punch. Crystal Palace had battled so well for the whole game and looked to be heading for a decent point against an Everton side buoyed by their 4-0 win at Manchester City last week. But just as it looked like they had done enough, Seamus Coleman popped up with a winner. So now you've had the match review, we're now going to move on to the player rankings. Before we start, don't forget to follow us across social media on Twitter and Facebook at Crystal Palace for all the latest news. And for all you Facebook users out there, don't forget to check out our Facebook group so you can join in with the latest discussions, read the latest news and post your own opinion. So like I said there, if you're on social media and you do want to get in contact with us, then of course you can follow us on both Twitter and Facebook, and you can find both these pages using the @Crystal Palace. And obviously I personally do follow both these accounts, but I would recommend you do follow both these pages because we do regularly update them both with all the latest news, and that is including, transfer rumours in the January transfer window. So if you do want to keep up to date with all the ongoings, the incomings, the outgoings, and anything really about the club, then of course, the best place to keep up to date is obviously our account, and we do regularly update it with all things Palace. We keep putting content out there every day, so if you do want to keep up to date with that, it's a good place to go. And obviously we do keep updating it regularly. We also post, player manager interviews on there as well. So if you do want to hear what the player had to say after the game, what the manager had to say after the game, then of course we'll post, various links to interviews so you can, hear opinions about the game from both the player and manager perspective. And also, much like many Twitter accounts in a minute, we do regularly post quite a lot of Twitter polls. If you do want to get involved and have your opinion heard, then do come back or go on Twitter to see our polls, have a vote in your poll, maybe comment on it about your opinion so we can hear your opinion and actually see as a fan base as a whole what the majority of people think. And that's really, I would highly recommend you do join them because, it is a good way to keep up to date, but also a good way to share your opinion in the fact that you can vote in the polls. And obviously, away from both the main Twitter and Facebook page, if you are on Facebook, I'd highly recommend, and I would say this myself, I'm in the group myself, highly recommend you do join the Facebook group, which much like the main social media pages, you can find using the @Crystal Palace group. And obviously, I've said I would highly recommend it. I would certainly recommend you do join the group because on there, after the game, fans go on there to post their own opinion, whether that be on players and how they perform throughout the game, or just anything they saw in the game, whether it be a tackle, a refereeing decision. And they put that on there so they can put their opinion there so other fans can see it, and also so they can share their opinion with other fans. And of course, if there's anything else you would like to discuss with other fans, whether that be transfers, whether that be something with the club, then of course, go on the Facebook group, post it on there so obviously other fans can, hear what you've had to say and obviously comment with that as well. So, it's a fantastic way to share your opinion, have your say on the game. And also, this is what I quite liked about quite a lot of Facebook groups, to be honest, not just ours, but you can go on the Facebook group and actually, hear what others had to say and obviously comment on that. And that's what's good thing about the Facebook group. So if you do like posting your own opinion for others to see, and you like reading what others had to see and commenting on that, then of course the Facebook group is a good place to go. And much like, both of these Twitter and Facebook main pages, we do regularly update you the latest news when the new podcast is coming out. So if you do want to keep up to date with all things Palace, then of course this place is the best place to go. But obviously, if you are looking for these social media groups and you can't find them using the @ you can click the links in the description below. So if you're listening to the podcast on iTunes or on YouTube, if you go below in the description, you can find all the links there which you need to find the social media accounts. But obviously I've set this challenge to listeners for a few weeks now. If you are listening to YouTube, you of course can comment on the video, and that's what I want you to do. I want you to comment about what you thought about the game, but also who you thought a standout player was. So obviously I give you my man of match later on in the podcast, then of course you can give your man of match as well, and that's because we want to hear what you had to say. So of course the podcast is me giving my opinion as well as the player and manager's opinion on the game, but also do comment below with what you thought about the game. And I've said this at the beginning, the last few weeks I've set a challenge to the listeners, and that's to give you me your player ranking. So of course in the podcast I go through all of the players, giving them ratings from 1 to 10, obviously 1 being the worst and 10 being the best, and that's just describing how I thought they performed throughout the game. And all I want you to do as the listeners, you can listen to my opinion, listen to how I summarise the players' performances, you can watch the replays of the game. All I want you to do is go below in the YouTube comments and obviously comment below with your player rankings, so listing all of the players, maybe a few of the substitutes, and obviously giving them their ratings from 1 to 10. And the reason that's good is so you can compare your opinion on the game to my one, and I can look at your opinion and go, we had a similar outlook on the game. And next week I want you to do the same as well. Comment below the video with the player rankings, and the main reason I want to do that is so I can compare my view and how I thought the players performed throughout the game and compare it to yours. And the main reason for that is just to see whether as a fan base we have quite a similar outlook of the game. And also, I've said this already, yes, you can comment with your player rankings, rating all of the players from 1 to 10, but also feel free, to comment below anything about the game. And certainly this game, there was a few controversial decisions by the referee, so do comment below what you think about them. And also the man of the match, because, quite a lot we go through all the players, we give them really good ratings, but we never recognise them for being the best player. So of course, if you do want to, comment below with who you thought the best player was, then of course do that in the link, or do that in the comments section below. So obviously now to move on to the player rankings, but before we do that, I just want to give you a rundown of the game, and especially obviously the positives we can take from the game, and also a few of the controversial decisions which I've already discussed just in the intro there. But obviously first thing really, the new formation, Palace changed to a 3-5-2 formation, and it did encourage a good performance with plenty of fight. We haven't seen any fighting spirit from the team in recent games, but actually whether it be the spark of a new formation, the new signings, or whether it be just the way the managers changed up the team, we were very encouraged by the fact that the team performance was much better than it was before, and also the fact that the players were fighting till the end trying to get a result, whereas in the last few games, as once we conceded, the whole confidence was lost and we couldn't really go forward and do something in the game. And obviously unfortunately we did have the positivity, we had the fight, but that wasn't really good, and that wasn't enough to get something from the game. But there are plenty of positives. I've already said that. You've probably heard that in the player rankings. The fact that Hennessy was a star player, making very many crucial saves, which I'll go on to talk about. Remy as well. Remy, he hasn't played in about 5 months. He's played the last few games, and he's looked impressive. He uses his pace to get behind strikers, to get behind the defenders, sorry. And although his passing and his touches are a bit sluggish at the minute, that's only going to get better as he gets back up to match fitness. But certainly a few nice touches there and good link-up play with Benteke. Certainly looking like so far, if he can stay fit, a very good signing for Palace. And obviously Schlupp as well, the new signing, £12 million come to Palace. And obviously where we were playing the new formation with wing backs, there was a perfect position for Schlupp to play, and he impressed. He provided us with a bit more confidence, the fact that he was a lot more solid than Ward's been on the left, or say Martin Kelly's been on the left. So he gave us a little bit more confidence in the fact that when we went forward, he would be able to track back. When we had to defend, he was able to do that. And certainly I'll go on to talk about it once more later on in the podcast, but certainly Schlupp, he made a few good defensive tackles, blocks and headers as well. So a good performance from him, very impressive. But there's all these positives to take from the game, them 3 in particular which I wanted to highlight. But actually it was a very desperately disappointing loss, and that's, considering we had an improved performance, you wouldn't think we'll be so disappointed after a loss. But to be honest, it is a good performance is often wrecked by the manner in which some refereeing decisions go. So this game, I've said this already, it was very disappointing for us, not because of how bad we performed, because it was a much improved performance, good, you know, sort of fighting spirit in the team, but because of the disgusting officiating in the game, it just totally, you know, destroyed the game. And I've said this on social media, I know, especially, you know, the refereeing was absolutely horrendous. You know, there was no blame on the players today. You know, the players were fantastic, gave it their all, you know, they had fighting spirit, and it was absolutely disgraceful refereeing. You know, Schlupp's down injured inside their box. He's gone out of play, obviously, that's fine, but then he wasn't allowed treatment, so, you know, it isn't a head injury, so the referee doesn't have to stop the game, which is, I understand that, but as soon as the ball went out of play, which it did for a throw, and I was literally sat right in front of where the throwing happened, you know, that's fine. The referee should have allowed Schlupp to get treatment so we could get a sub on. Obviously, we you know, we couldn't get a sub on, and obviously Everton scored from that. But obviously, Everton winning their rights to play on, you know, won the ball, you know, until the ball goes out of play, they can play on, they can attack the ball. But as soon as the ball went out of play, which it did, the referee should have let the player go for treatment. So he would have let that, should have let the, you know, the fitness players, the doctors come on the pitch to treat the player, but also they should have let us to bring on a sub so we could play with 11 men, because for the 5 minutes that Schlupp was down injured, we were with 10 men. And obviously I've said this already, you know, once the ball went out of play, the referee should have let the doctors come on to treat Schlupp, and obviously to let him get treatment so we can get the sub on. And to be honest, you look back at the goal, you know, Everton scored from the hole that Schlupp left. So Schlupp was playing on the left flank as the wing back. You know, that's where Coleman attacked down that flank, got the ball in, and obviously scored the goal. So obviously for the whole game, Schlupp was man marking Coleman, and he was fantastic at doing that. He kept Coleman's threat to bay. But as soon as Schlupp went down, we were down to 10 men. You know, Coleman managed to run through that space, and because Schlupp wasn't there marking him, because he was injured, you know, he made it all the way through. And you know, although we had this injustice in the fact that, you know, that we were down to 10 men, the referee didn't let our injured player go off for a sub to come on, and the fact that we conceded the goal, you know, I didn't come out the ground angry. You know, there was a great effort from the players. You know, there was no lack of it that has been in past weeks. There was, like I said already, the fighting spirit from the team, and actually it made a pleasant change. The fact that even though we lost, we actually came away from the game with actually quite a positive outlook on what happened. Now, obviously, I've talked about the fact that how we conceded a goal, the fact that Everton were able to run down the flank, use the space which was left by Schlupp, and the fact that we were playing with 10 men. You know, the goal was also offside, which is even more depressing. And, you know, Allardyce said this after the game. I personally wasn't at the right position in the main stand to actually see the goal as it happened, but Sky Sports have used their technology to say it was offside. And yes, it was fractions offside, his foot was just offside, but offside is offside, and if it's offside, you know, the goal shouldn't have counted. And Sky Sports have done that. They've got all the technology, they can do that, and obviously they told Allardyce, and Allardyce has reviewed it and said that yes, that's definitely offside. And I think we can trust Allardyce given how much experience he's had with football. And obviously Alan Shearer, the man who's blocked every single Palace fan on Twitter, had other ideas, and actually he said that on Match of the Day that it wasn't offside, and actually the evidence he used proved them wrong. So obviously Sky Sports have got very, very good technology. BBC, it seems like they haven't got very good technology, because the evidence they showed, the picture they had of the offside goal, let's say, it clearly showed that Coleman's foot was over the line, but according to Match of the Day and according to Alan Shearer, that's not offside. So the fact that they had a picture which Alan Shearer was using to say that he wasn't offside, the fact that his foot was over the line which says the offside, just proves that he was offside. And you know, that just makes it even more depressing. The fact that we conceded a goal when we were down to 10 men, we weren't allowed to bring on a sub, and the fact that, you know, the goal was scored through the space that he left, and just to sort of stop it up, the fact that the goal was offside. So actually, you know, it did really put a dampen sort of light on the game, because actually it was a very good game. I've said this already. I came out of the ground quite happy with the result, you know, with the positive impact we've had from the players, the fighting spirit. But obviously, once again, you know, terrible refereeing has cost us, and this is why, in my opinion, we need to get the video, you know, referring TMO as they call it in rugby. We need to get that into football so we can review decisions like this. And also we need to make sure that when players are down injured and the ball goes out, the referee knows the rules so that he can be let on. But that's the thing in football: if a player goes down injured, unless it's a head injury, they won't stop play straight away. But in this instance, yes, it wasn't a head injury, so you play on. But as soon as the ball goes out of play, give the player some help, you know, the medical team come on, and then you allow sub to come on. But obviously in this case, the referee didn't do that. But certainly do comment below with what you think about the refereeing decisions, you know, whether you think the goal was offside, and also, you know, whether you think, you know, Schlupp should have been allowed to go off the pitch, and whether he should have been able to bring a sub on in the 5 minutes which he was down injured. But obviously, enough of that. Do comment below, like I said, what you think of it. But now to move on to the player rankings, starting with Wayne Hennessy, who I'm going to give a 7. Perhaps spurred on by the Speroni banners behind him, the Welsh stopper put in an excellent performance in between the sticks, made some crucial saves in both halves which kept Palace in the game. His tendency to spill the ball when making those saves tested the defensive nerves though. So obviously Wayne Hennessy here, I've given him a 7, because you know, in the last few weeks he's been a bit shaky, but actually in this game, you know, he put in a pretty decent performance. And whether that'll be because he's got his confidence back, or whether that'll be the fact that, you know, the Speroni banners behind him helped him to propel himself forward. So obviously Speroni broke the record a few weeks ago, and obviously the Homestead Fanatics made the banners to obviously commemorate that. But obviously maybe Hennessy, seeing the fact that, you know, how much of a legend Speroni is and the fact that the fans love him so much, maybe that, you know, helped his confidence to actually make him want to put in a performance. And certainly that did reflect in the way he played throughout the game. You know, he put in an excellent performance. I've said that before, you know, whether that will be because of the new coaching staff, whether it be a confidence issue he had before, or whether that will be the fact that the banner behind him made him really push on to try and give something to the team. And obviously, you know, we talk about you know, goalkeepers winning you points or giving you wins in the league. You know, Wayne Hennessy certainly done that in this game, and although we didn't win the game, made many crucial saves in both halves. You know, quite a lot in the first half, and also in the second half he made some crucial saves in the game, and that kept us in the game. And the fact that he got low enough to make these saves, the fact that he kept himself big to get to these balls, you know, just showing, you know, Palace fans who doubted him when he had a dip in form, just showing how actually he can be crucial to Palace because he can keep us in the game. And the only really downside to his game is the fact that when he makes these saves, you know, yes, they're not the easiest or they're not the hardest saves to make, but sometimes, you know, he goes down low. He's good that he's managed to parry the ball away, but sometimes that tendency to spill the ball, you know, where he should have been catching the ball, he just sort of parries it away. And sometimes, you know, the defence's nerves get pushed a bit. You know, the fact that because he spilled the ball in the area, a player could pounce on it and score. So the defence were a bit nervous at times. But overall, a pretty good performance from Wayne Hennessy. I've given him a 7 because, unlike other weeks where he's lacked a bit of confidence, this game, he came to this game with quite a lot of confidence. And I've said this already, whether that'll be because of the new coaching staff, whether that'll be because of his confidence, whether it be because of the banner behind him and the fact that Speroni's sort of his experience has propelled him forward, I don't know what it is. So comment below what you think about Hennessy, but certainly an excellent performance from him, and obviously one that did keep Palace in the game. And luckily, unluckily for us, he couldn't keep us in the game because we conceded the goal in the last sort of 3 minutes of the game. But certainly a powerful strike from him, and the fact that he was offside just adds to it as well. Really, you should have kept the clean sheet in the game. Obviously our first one in the league for quite a long time, but a 7 for him, a fair result. And obviously before I go on to talk about, you know, the defence, and I'm going to say the defence because it was quite a defensive game. We did sit quite deep for that game, and obviously we did play the 3-5-2 formation. And obviously that consists of you've got your 3 centre backs, you've got your 2 wing backs, you've got your 3 midfielders, and obviously you've got your 2 strikers. So obviously for us, I'm going to go through this in the order of the defensive players, so I am going to include the wing backs in the defensive areas. But obviously we had the 3 centre backs in James Tompkins, Scott Dann and Damien Delaney, and obviously on either wing you got Joe Ward on the right hand wing back, and obviously you got Jeffrey Schlupp as well, new signing, on the left wing back role. And obviously that leaves, you know, your 3 main sort of powerful midfielders in midfield, in the middle of the field. You know, we've got Johan Cabaye, Jason Punchard and James McCarver sort of running the midfield, giving a little bit of protection to the back 3, even though they don't really need it with the, you know, the wing backs. They try and support the strikers as much as possible. So it was really running the game, and I certainly can say sort of a power horse, let's say, the midfield. And I think the midfield is sometimes how you win a game. The fact that these, you know, guys in the midfield can keep possession. And obviously in your 3-5-2 you've got your 2 strikers up front with Remy and Benteke. So, you know, I'll go on to talk about these 2 players, but Remy gave us a little bit more pace, and obviously Benteke, as usual, gave us the aerial presence. But I certainly think that this formation could be the way going forward. The fact that we've got the 3 centre backs, which gives you the solidity. Then you've got your 2 wing backs who are both doing defensive work, so once again improving their solidity, but also because they're wing backs they can get forward, and we definitely saw that with Ward and Schlupp with some of their better games in quite a long time. Obviously you've got your midfield as well, so they're also obviously versatile, so they're neither attacking or defensive, so they're sort of floating in the middle of the game, sort of holding the whole team together. And obviously you've got your strikers up front. You know, the way it's going to work with Palace is probably going to have Remy and Benteke. I think that's sort of the strike force that Allardyce is going to go with. It works perfectly fine for us because you've got the midfield and the wing back backs supplying these two strikers up front, and obviously you've got the pace of Remy to run in behind, and obviously you've got the physical presence of Benteke to feed Remy or to get headers. So, you know, it works quite well. It gives us a little bit of balance. Now to move on to the first defensive player in Jeffrey Schlupp, who I'm going to give a 7. Impressive full debut for the new addition, who showed his turn of pace would be a real asset to the team. Given the left wing-back role, Schlupp showed tenacity and kept Coleman quiet. It was little surprise that the Everton player scored with Palace's defenders down injured. So obviously Jeffrey Schlupp here, he has been a debate of the refereeing decisions, and I've discussed that already. I don't really want to discuss it more than I already have, but certainly, you know, the main thing really is the fact that as soon as Schlupp went down injured and we were playing with 10 men, you know, Everton scored. So it just shows actually in this game how crucial and how good of an asset, you know, Jeffrey Schlupp was to the team, and that's why I've given him the 7. And, you know, we saw him against West Ham, I believe it was, and he was quite impressive, you know, running down the flank, trying to get crosses in, trying to make an impact, and actually he's done this in this game as well. And obviously he did play the full game, playing in his sort of best role as left wing back, and actually that worked really well for him. And the thing we've lacked at left back since the injury of Papa Soare is a bit of pace, and Jeffrey Schlupp gave that to the team, and it's a real asset to the team. The fact that we've got a fast player who can not only, you know, go forward and attack, get crosses in, we've also got a player who can use his pace to defend well, and that's why he's given the wing-back role, because yes, he can go forward, but also he can go back and defend, and that's the thing really. You know, we don't really play with wing-backs quite often, and obviously Allardyce used this at Sunderland last season, so he's going to try and use it here with us, and actually it did work quite well for us. And obviously we talk about a few weeks ago, you know, Palace showed tenacity to get back into the game, try and have a control of the game. You know, Jeffrey Schlupp done exactly that. He showed tenacity, whether it be when he was defending, when he was going forward. He used that to really make an impact on the team, and obviously that meant that he was a huge asset. And also he kept Coleman quiet, so that was the man he was marking. You know, each player had their player to mark, and that's why I quite liked the way this formation worked. But obviously Coleman, when Coleman scored the goal, it wasn't because Schlupp had let him go past. It's the fact that Schlupp wasn't playing, and the fact that Schlupp wasn't there to block him. And I'm sure that if Schlupp hadn't gone down injured, or we had got a sub on to go in the place of Schlupp, I'm sure we probably wouldn't have conceded that goal, because there wouldn't have been that space for Everton to run in and score the goal. But to be honest, I'm going to give him a 7, because it was a very impressive debut from him. He showed why his pace, his defending skills, his attacking sort of offensive play, he showed that in the game why it will be an asset to us, and hopefully as the season progresses on, he can be an even more crucial player for Palace to obviously get out of the situation we're in. And to be honest, the thing I can't really highlight enough is the fact that as soon as he went down injured and we were playing with 10 men, you saw how much of an influence he had on the game, as the fact that as soon as he went off, Everton scored the goal. Obviously moving on now to the centre-back, Damien Delaney, who I'm going to give a 6. Played his part in a much more organised defensive unit. Delaney was required to cover Lukaku's movements across the back line, as well as to deal with the threat of Ross Barkley. He did that well. So obviously Damien Delaney here, I've given him a 6. You know, Damien Delaney, a very quality player with experience, and obviously we've seen that in the last few weeks, you know, where he's had to sort of, when we've been under pressure, he's tried to try and step up, and we haven't really seen that from him. But in this game, he played his part, you know, in the back three, in organising the defence. You know, we were much more organised, and people may say, yes, we've lost another game in a row, but actually we were a lot more organised. And you've got to look at the bigger picture, and that's personally how I look at the game. The fact that we were much better organised defensively, and I think that's probably because of the new formation, and also because, you know, Sam Allardyce and Sammy Lee, the new coaching staff, have obviously helped us to not only organise our defence, but just to make the defence a bit better, you know, give us more confidence, and hopefully that will be good going forward. But obviously, yes, it's good having defensive organisation, but obviously the players, and in Delaney's case, he was marking Lukaku, so each player had their player to mark and make sure they had a little opportunity as possible. Obviously, Damien Delaney covering Lukaku, he covered his, you know, movement across the back line very well. Obviously, playing with a back three against one striker can be difficult, and obviously it proved with Lukaku, very limited to very few chances. You know, Damien Delaney, you know, making tackles to him, getting higher than him to get, you know, headers away, trying to be very physical with him to stop that movement across the back line. He done that very well, and obviously with Lukaku being so isolated, it meant that the like of Ross Barkley came forward, Coleman as well, and obviously Damien Delaney had to do that as well, deal with Ross Barkley, and considering both these players didn't really have that many opportunities, it just shows that how that sort of defensive work, that organisation worked really well. And to be honest, just a really thing, I said it in the description, you know, thing to sum it up, you know, he did that well, you know, he done what was asked from him in that formation, he done what he had to do, which was marking Lukaku and Barkley and kept their chances to a minimum. And that's all you want from a defender. You don't want them doing, you know, snazzy stuff. You want them to do the job done, do the nitty gritty. And obviously in this game, Damien Delaney using his experience to do that. But certainly a 6 from him, you know, not the, you know, it wasn't a fantastic performance, but he done what was needed off of him. And that's what we need from players at the minute. We don't need players doing fantastic things. We need them to do the basics just to help the team. And obviously Damien Delaney done that. And I certainly can say with him playing sort of right centre-back, I think we can say that, you know, he did help with the organisation of the defence. But certainly good game from him, and obviously good marking of all the Everton players. So obviously now to move on to the centre-back, the central centre-back, Scott Dann, and obviously the captain, who I'm going to give a 7. As with Delaney, tasked with keeping Lukaku away from goal, and did that by having a solid showing, and enjoying a good battle with physical offering from the opposition front line. So obviously Scott Dann here, I've given him a 7, because much like Jeffrey Schlupp, in the fact, you know, he had a very solid performance. And, you know, I am not going to go into too much detail, because much like Delaney, what I've said about him already, the organisation of the whole defence was a lot better, and obviously that meant that we had a better defensive performance overall. And much like Delaney, Scott Dann was tasked with keeping Lukaku away from goal, and considering Lukaku wasn't Everton's biggest threat, it just shows that how, you know, their job to mark this certain player actually did well. And he did that, you know, obviously, yes, he made tackles to stop Lukaku getting forward. He tried to get headers away. But also, it was just a solid showing. You know, he'd done that by having a good battle, physical, you know, presence. You know, Scott Dann, very tall player, much like Lukaku, both very physical players. So Scott Dann uses physicality to try and keep Lukaku away from goal. And obviously, by doing that, he offered, you know, the opposition front line very few opportunities. And that's what I thought was key for Palace. You know, not only to get our confidence back up, but also just to have sort of physicality and use it to our advantage to, you know, up the, you know, organisation of the team. But to be really honest, you know, from the captain, I've given him a 7. A very solid performance from him. You know, can't fault any of the defenders really for the goal. You know, and that's why I've given him a 7. You know, he's lacked confidence, much like all the defenders in the last few weeks. But obviously in this game, he sort of regained his confidence, and whether that be him playing in a new sort of formation, or whether it be just an overall boost of confidence, he had a very solid performance. But, you know, I'm not really going to talk too much about it, because much like Delaney, he done the simple things right, and obviously the main thing really is that he used his physicality. Obviously moving on now to the right-hand left-back, or the right-sided centre-back, James Tomkins, who I'm going to give a 7. With Ward playing as a wing-back, Tomkins not only had to cover the central threat, but Everton's wing play. He was often the defender that brought the ball out of play to push the back line forward. So obviously James Tomkins here, you know, he can play a number of positions, and in this game, obviously with him playing as a sort of a third centre back, he had to be both, you know, central and obviously going out wide as well. And obviously with Ward playing as the wing back, you know, he wasn't playing as a right back. You know, there was a little bit of space there, and obviously Tomkins had to cover that space. You know, when Everton were going forward, yes, he had to try and be central to sort of deal with the threat of Lukaku and Barkley, but also, you know, the fullbacks of Everton like to attack, so he had to make sure he was out wide to contain him as well. And, you know, Everton's wing play was fantastic. The subs they brought on, obviously Coleman, the likes of them players, you know, they're very good going forward, and that wing play was fantastic. And yes, Ward did deal with it quite a lot of the time, but because Ward is playing as a wing back, when he goes forward, there's a little bit more space left there, because you've only got 3 centre backs as opposed to sort of 4 defenders. So sometimes that leaves space there. But obviously James Tomkins, where he can play right back, he did drift out there a few times, and obviously he was the one to cover the area, and he actually done much like all the defenders. You know, you can't fault them for anything in this game, because they were pretty solid. And obviously you talk about defenders, you know, being ball playing, you know, we talk about defenders being good defensively. James Tomkins is both good at defending, but also good at sort of bringing other players into play. So obviously, you know, Damien Delaney, as good as he is, his distribution isn't fantastic. He often lofts the ball, hoofs the ball up the pitch, whereas James Tomkins, he'd get the ball, try and push forward, make maybe 5-10 metres, and then try and get the front line to push up, and then he'd find a pass, find a cross. So actually, yes, he was good defensively, but also his offensive attributes were good as well. The fact that when he gets the ball, instead of just hoofing it up and maybe us losing possession, he'd try and make a few yards and then find a pass, which ultimately did create or did lead to us creating a lot of opportunities. But certainly a 7 from him, I think, is a pretty fair result from him. And, you know, I've said this already, the whole defence as a whole was a lot more solid, and obviously James Tomkins is a classic example of that. But certainly, with him playing sort of the centre-back role, when he had to drift that wide, he done that well. When he had to defend the central attacking of Lukaku or Barkley, he done that very well as well. And obviously, unlike the other two defenders, he was a ball-playing centre-back, trying to get the ball forward, and obviously that led to us creating more opportunities. But obviously moving on now to the last sort of defensive player, or you could call it sort of the attacking/offensive player, and that is Joe Ward, who I'm going to give a 6. Handled the threat of Kevin Morales and Leighton Baines well. While he doesn't have the pace you would expect of a wing-back, he covered a lot of ground offensively and defensively. Many expected he would struggle at right wing back, but Ward quickly got used to that in a more advanced role than usual. So obviously Joe Ward here, as with Schlupp, you know, they were playing a wing back role, and actually Joe Ward, he'd done that pretty well, and that's why I've given him the 6. Now I've talked about Everton's wing play with James Tompkins, you know, Kevin Morales, Leighton Baines are very good offensive and defensive players. So Joe Ward, you know, he had to handle the threat of them. And considering both of these players didn't really have a massive influence on the game from an Everton perspective, you could say that Joe Ward done his job well. And obviously, we talk about wing-backs having pace. You know, Jeffrey Schlupp's got fantastic pace. You know, Papa Soares has fantastic pace. A player we're currently linked with, Patrick Van Aanholt, who apparently is having talks with the club, you know, he's got loads of pace. So you expect that these wing backs and left back and right back, you know, you would expect them to have pace. And Joe Ward, he doesn't really have pace. And whether that be him playing at right back, right wing back, you know, he doesn't have the pace you'd expect. So you wouldn't expect him to go forward, run past the defender. But actually, considering he wasn't, you know, that good going forward, or he hasn't got the pace, he covered quite a lot of ground offensively and defensively. So once again, running back to try and make tackles, to make blocks, to make sure that they couldn't get forward. And obviously, because the fact that Kevin Morales and Leighton Baines didn't really have many opportunities offensively, it just shows that how, you know, Joe Ward's defensive work was good. And obviously offensively, when you're playing in a wing-back role, when your team's in possession, you want to attack. So he got forward, tried to get crosses into the area, tried to run down the flanks, and actually he done that pretty well. And obviously many people thought he would struggle at right wing-back because he hasn't got pace. But actually, you know, he got used to it quite quickly, and I think the reason he did sort of go into the role quite quickly is because he didn't really have to worry too much about defending, because obviously you've got your 3 centre backs and maybe your defensive mid. So when he goes forward, he didn't really have to worry about, you know, getting back to defend because it was already covered. So that meant that when he was going forward, he wasn't really worried and was able to try and create stuff for the team. And that's the thing we've seen from him. You know, when he signed for the club from Portsmouth back in the Championship, I believe it was 2012, you know, he was originally a midfielder. So you could say that actually, you know, we wouldn't expect him. We would have expected him to struggle at right back. But considering he's played in the midfield before, you know, it wasn't really that much of a surprise. But certainly a 6 from him, much like all of the defence. And I can't keep saying this enough. You know, a very good, solid performance from him. You know, Kevin Morales, Leighton Baines, the 2 players he was meant to mark, he done that very well. He done the job you'd expect. And although he played, you know, in that sort of right wing back role, we all thought he would struggle because he hasn't got any pace, but actually he proved us wrong and actually put in a pretty good performance both offensively and defensively. So now to move on to the midfield 3 of Yohan Cabaye, Jason Puncheon and James McArthur, starting with Yohan Cabaye, who I'm going to give an 8. Another good performance for the Frenchman, who worked hard in a tight midfield battle. Palace's most positive performer, always ready to receive the ball and always looking for a pass. It was no surprise that when he went off, the midfield lost some of that foothold. So for Yohan Cabaye here, I've given him an 8, and as you can probably hear or guess from all the ratings I've given the other players, he was probably Palace's best player. And once again, you know, Cabaye, yes, he's been dropped in and out of form since he's joined the club, but actually it was another a good performance from him. And, you know, we talk about the midfield 3, you know, playing in front of the defence, neither playing offensively or defensively. It was quite a tight-packed midfield. The fact that you've got your wing-backs giving you width. So these sort of 3 players have got to cram into the midfield and try to do a job there. And actually, I think Cabaye had a good performance in that sort of tight midfield role. And he worked hard. You know, yes, there wasn't a lot of space because we were quite isolated playing in that midfield 3. But actually, he tried to do what he could with it. And I can certainly say that he was probably Palace's most positive performer. The fact that, you know, he tried to keep going till the end. The fact that he kept battling, and that's something we haven't seen with the Palace team in the last few weeks. You know, a team that would keep battling, try to get a result. And actually, you know, Yohan Cabaye, probably Palace's most positive performer. You know, when all things weren't going against us, when we hit the crossbar, when we weren't creating opportunities, when Everton were frustrating us, Yohan Cabaye tried to carry on. And obviously, because he was trying to be positive, he tried to go on and get something from the game. And obviously, we talk about his influence in the midfield. You know, he's always aware, he's always looking to receive the ball, tries to get the ball at his feet to try and find a pass, try and create opportunities, and also looking for a pass as well. So he's not only good at, you know, a midfielder at finding passes or getting crosses in, he's also good at looking for a pass. So it's not about him getting the pass and then sort of trying to find a cross to another player, but he's also looking to get into a position, maybe run into deep into the or run late into the box, and then try to get on the end of the pass. And that's something that's something I quite like about his game, the fact that he's not only looking to supply other players, but he's also trying to look to get on the end of supply from the other players. And it's no surprise, we've seen this with the likes of James McArthur early on in the season. When Kabay went off, you could see that the midfield sort of lost that composure, and it wasn't really surprising that when he went off, I personally wouldn't have liked to see him go off, but our midfield lost a bit of a foothold. So the fact that we were quite dominant throughout the game, in the fact that we managed to contain Everton, considering they put 4 goals past Man City, we did contain them pretty well. But obviously when Kabay went off, we sort of lost a bit of that composure, that sort of strength and that sort of ability in the midfield, and it was quite apparent. But certainly an 8 from him. I'll go on to talk about the man of the match, but I can certainly say he's a high nomination for the man of the match award because of how good he was in the game. The fact that it was a very good game from him once again. He had to deal with the tight midfield. He'd done that fantastically. But also the main thing I really like about his game is the fact that he was Palace's most positive performer, always trying to get something for the team. When he had the ball, he was always looking to get the ball. When he had the ball, looking for a pass, and obviously also looking for a pass himself. But obviously moving on to Jason Puncheon, I'm going to give a 6. Played in a deeper role, and while I didn't suit him, he did well at dealing with Tom Davies. Worked well getting up and down the pitch to play his part in the change of formation. His possession of the ball was vital in a close game. So obviously Jason Puncheon here, I've given him a 6 because much like the other players, he put in a pretty solid performance. And we all know that Jason Puncheon, he's primarily used as a winger or a central attacking mid. But in this game, he's played in quite a deep role. And while that doesn't suit him, while he's got the pace and passing ability, he shouldn't really be playing in that deep role. He actually did a pretty decent job. And I think that's something that the management have seen in him. The fact that as he's getting older, and because we've got the likes of Townsend, Schlupp now, we've got Sacco, Zaha, because we've got these sort of attacking players now, it's limiting Puncheon's chances in an attacking role. So if he can do a defensive job, he's probably going to get into the team more. And certainly the coaching staff have seen that in him, and actually we've seen in games that he can actually do a crucial job. Now obviously I talked about the defenders, having a player to mark. Jason Puncheon had Tom Davies to mark, and he'd done that very well. We talk about him playing deep. His main priority was to keep Tom Davies's sort of influence on the game to a minimum, and he'd done that very well. Now obviously he was playing quite defensively, but when he had to go up or when he had to go back and track back, he played his part. So obviously with us changing the formation, all of the players have got to get used to it and change to it and adapt to it. And obviously Jason Puncheon, he did that. He tried to go up and down the pitch when he had to. He tried to make the formation work, and obviously it influenced in us having a pretty decent game. And the same goes with his ball retention. The fact that he uses possession well when he has the ball, whether it be offensively or defensively, he tries to do what he can with the ball. And in a close game against Everton, a team who put 4 goals past Man City, who are a very good team in my opinion, the fact that we kept the ball to try and combat that just shows of how much influence Puncheon had on the game. And if it weren't for him making these vital passes, keeping the ball, we maybe could have lost the game. But the fact that we kept the ball, went under pressure, just shows of how much a good performance and influence he had on the game. But certainly a 6 from him, playing in a deeper role, which isn't really his natural position, but obviously done a decent job there. Same with McArthur. I'm going to give James McArthur a 6. Worked in a more advanced role, but other than the cross to Benteke, which resulted in the striker hitting the bar, he struggled to make anything meaningful from it. So James McArthur, I've given him a 6. Much like all of the players, if I give them a 6, it's a pretty average, decent performance from him. James McArthur, yes, he was good in the game, but because he was playing in a more advanced role, which isn't his natural position, he sort of swapped positions with Puncheon, he didn't really have as much influence on the game as we know he can have. The fact that he's a workhorse in quite a lot of games. But obviously the only real thing of impact which was fantastic from the game from him is that the cross in the first half to Benteke, he ran down the left flank, saw that there was space there, took the space when Schlupp wasn't there, put in a lovely decent cross into Benteke. Benteke, lovely height to get onto it, headed it down, but obviously it hit the crossbar. So actually he did have one sort of chance in the game, which was fantastic, where his cross resulted in Benteke hitting the bar. But to be honest, other than that, he struggled to make anything meaningful from it. So although he had a good performance and his presence in the midfield was good, the fact that he was pressing down defenders, making them make mistakes to get the ball, and although his passing and sort of possession, much like Puncheon, was good, his overall impact on the game wasn't as good as it could have been. And whether that be because he's just come back from injury, or whether that be just a confidence thing like the rest of the squad. But certainly, I think a 6 is a fair result for him. Obviously moving on now to the front 2 of Christian Benteke and Loic Remy. So I'm going to start with Christian Benteke, who I'm going to give a 6. worked harder than in previous games and saw a better quality of service to him, which resulted in him hitting the bar early on in the game. If there's a criticism, there should have been were opportunities where instead of shooting or trying to create a chance for himself, he should have laid the ball off. It wasn't a bad performance though. Worked the front line both well and without a partner. Unlucky with a great headed effort that came off the bar. So see Christian Benteke here, I've given him a 6 and I can't highlight this enough. It was a pretty decent performance from him. Now obviously, I personally have been a little bit critical of him in the past few weeks, and I know quite a lot of people in general have, but actually in this game, if you look at his performance, he actually worked a lot more harder than he has done in previous games, and whether that be because the service to him was better and there was more of it, or whether that be, you know, the fact that he was trying to run a bit more and the fact that he had a partner, but certainly the fact that he put more effort into the game and, you know, tried to work harder resulted in him hitting the bar early on and also having a few more opportunities from the game. So I talked about MacArthur's cross was fantastic, but the fact that Benteke got really high above the defender, you know, headed it goalwards and it came with the bar just shows how much of an influence he can have. And, you know, we've been very critical, I know I have, of him in previous games, saying that he should do better, he should try and get involved in the midfield, try to sort of get the ball to his feet rather than his head. But obviously in this game he had a variety of crosses coming in, balls coming into his feet, and he done what he could with it, and certainly he worked a lot harder. So do comment below whether you think him working harder improved his influence on the game. But to be honest, there's always going to be a criticism of every play because they don't always do everything right. You know, with Benteke, you know, we talked about him getting better service. That's fine because he had more of the ball, but there were some opportunities, you know, which he had from the past where instead of shooting, you know, because he was isolated from the forwards or from the defenders, he should have tried to create a chance for someone else. So maybe lay the ball off to Remy, to Schlupp, to, you know, whoever was near him at the time. But, you know, he tried to take the opportunity, which is good. It shows that he's got the confidence in himself to take a chance. But sometimes instead of trying to create a chance himself, to get a goal for himself, maybe he should try and lay the ball off, get another teammate involved. And maybe, you know, we could have had more, you know, chances in the game if he had done that. But certainly I'm not going to criticise him too much for that because I've said this already, he worked a lot more harder than he's done in previous games, and it wasn't a bad performance. Yes, he could have done more in the fact that, you know, trying to find other opponents, but actually he done an alright job in himself. And, you know, with him playing up front with Remy, you know, he worked that front line very well, and even when Remy went off, when he was out of partner, where even though he was isolated, he done, you know, a pretty good job. And certainly a 6 from him, you know, I think it's a fair result. And the thing to really highlight is, you know, he worked harder in, you know, than he's done in previous games, and we saw that in the fact that, you know, in the first half his header came off the crossbar. Obviously moving on now to his partner Loic Remy, who I'm going to give a 7. A busy performance tinged somewhat by the rustiness that comes from being injured for 5 months. More performances like this should be a positive outcome. So obviously Loic Remy here, there's not really much to say about him other than he was fantastic throughout the game, and that's why I've given him the 7. You know, I think a busy performance is a good way to describe it because he used this pace to try and cause menace, to get behind the strikers and try and get the ball to Benteke, and actually that sort of partnership worked really well. And the only thing really down about his performance, yes, he used his pace and he had good shooting ability, he wasn't scared to take a shot. The only bad thing was his rustiness. So a few chances, you know, when he got the pass from, say, someone like Punch and Kabay or MacArthur, he would go to get the ball, take a touch, but because his touch was too heavy, because he was rusty, you know, it meant that we gave away possession. So hopefully, obviously, because he hasn't played in 5 months, you know, hopefully with him being back in the team, he can build up his fitness once again to obviously be more potent in front of goal. And certainly the fact that we've seen his pace and shooting ability, if he can work out his final touch and maybe his headering ability, he can turn into a much better player. But certainly more performances like this will be a positive outcome. The fact that we've seen his pace, his shooting, if he carries on like this and gets his, you know, I've said this already, his touch better, then certainly I could see him being, you know, turning into one of our signings of the season, because we haven't seen him yet, but what we've seen in the last few games is glimpses of obviously what is to come. But certainly his, you know, partnership with Benteke, he's got the pace, Benteke's got the physicality, that sort of playing off of each other, that pace and that sort of physicality, all of that, you know, boded to us having good game with us creating opportunities and chances. But hopefully, I've said this already, with him, when he gets back to full fitness, obviously he'll have more influence in the game than he did before. Obviously moving on now to these substitutes, Lee Ching-yong, Joe Ledley and Andros Townsend. And obviously I'm not going to give Joe Ledley or Andros Townsend ratings because they weren't really on the pitch long enough to make an impact. You know, Ledley was brought on just to provide fresh legs and just add a little bit more steel in the midfield, you know, in the middle of the park, just a bit more physicality. And the only real impact he had really, which is a slight criticism, is the goal that we conceded, which I've discussed already. It shouldn't have counted because it was offside, and B, because we were down to 10 men. But, you know, Joe Ledley, in the build-up to that, he made a clearance, but he didn't quite, if in doubt, hoof it out. He didn't quite hoof it out far enough. Obviously, I think it was Coleman controlled it, and he went through to score the goal. So, yes, he came on. He did all right job, you know, providing that little bit of support in front of the back line, added a little bit more physicality. But obviously, you know, that weak clearance led to us conceding the goal, which shouldn't have counted anyway. Andrews Townsend, he was only brought on for a few minutes, you know, brought on just before the final whistle was blown. If the referee had stopped the play for Schlupp, he would have come on 5 minutes earlier. But, you know, we're not going to discuss that refereeing decision any more than I already have done. And because he was brought on with only 3 minutes to go, he didn't really have any impact. But in saying that, he looked very positive. He came on to try and do something. He delivered some decent crosses in the area, looked a threat. But obviously, because he only had 3 and a bit minutes to do that, he couldn't really do that. But certainly, coming off the bench, he showed a lot of urgency. And considering it's at a time where he's been linked with a move away from the club, I certainly think that he certainly showed that he wants to play for the club with a solid performance here. Obviously, moving on to Lee Ching-yong, I'm going to give him a 6. You know, we know he isn't the best player. He's technically astute, you know. He isn't fantastic, but he does lack the cutting creativity that we need. So he's good at a player to bring on, say if you're protecting a lead, to keep hold of possession, which ultimately we tried to do because it was 0-0 at the time. But to be honest, he doesn't have the quality. He doesn't have the quality going forward to try and, you know, have shots, create chances, put crosses in. He hasn't got the pace, unlike Remy, so he didn't really have that much impact. But certainly, he's got the quality in holding on to the ball, but the quality he needs to bring in is the cutting-edge quality, whether that be shooting, passing, or crossing. But certainly, he came off for Remy, didn't really make that much of a great difference. But then in saying that, Remy had a lot better game, and obviously that's why I gave Remy the 7. Obviously, just to really summarise the game again, you know, I am going to give the defence a 7. You know, they were a lot more solid than they've been in past weeks. You know, solid defence, solidity was there. The organisation was back again. You know, we didn't concede from a set piece. So everything in that game defensively points to an improvement in the defence. Same in the midfield. You know, a more coherent midfield is like a word I like to use. You know, there's a lot of effort from there, chasing players down, creating them, or, you know, making sure Everton didn't have chances. You know, we tried to get the midfielders involved in the attack, so very good from them. And in the midfield, I'm going to include the wingers, or the fullbacks, or the wing-backs, let's call them. So obviously Ward and Schlupp, they were playing that role. They were very good as well in the midfield, both defensively and offensively. And then the attack, you know, I'm going to give a 6, and the reason for that is just Benteke and Remy, they created chances. That sort of partnership worked really well, but obviously because they didn't score, that's why I didn't give them a 7. But just a really few bullet points really, you know, Yohan Kabai's busy work, that's the one player to pick out. I talked about the midfield being coherent. Yohan Kabai's busy work in the midfield was key to that. You know, he kept putting Everton under constant pressure. And obviously the defence, I gave them a 7. They were more solid. You know, the back three, James Tompkins, Scott Dan, Jamie Delaney, they kept the attack to an absolute minimum. And considering they scored, you know, 4 goals against Manchester City, the fact that we only conceded 1, which shouldn't have counted anyway, just shows of how better we were defensively. And finally, really, I've talked about this at the beginning, you know, the referee's refusal to stop the play when the ball went out for a throw-in, when, you know, we should have had the sub to come on and Schlupp to go off injured. It did cost Palace the game because Everton scored when we were down to 10 men, and they obviously ran through the gap which was left by the absence of Schlupp. So once again, proving how a referee's decision has cost us the game. And I'm not going to blame the referee, because I think we didn't take our chances enough. But certainly, if the referee had let us play with let us bring a substitute on, play with 11 men, and have someone marking that space where Schlupp would have been, we probably wouldn't have conceded that goal from Coleman. So now to move on to the man of match award, but before I do that and give you my man of match and who I thought had the biggest influence in the game, I'm now going to give you the results of my Twitter poll. So obviously if you do want to vote in next week's Twitter poll and have your opinion heard on who you thought the best player was, and obviously the player with the biggest influence in the game, then of course you can vote in next week's Twitter poll. Now obviously at the beginning of the podcast I talked about following the Crystal Palace Twitter account, so you can keep up to date with the latest news and you can obviously vote in their polls. But obviously the man of match poll isn't run by Crystal Palace, it's actually run by my own personal Twitter account, which you can find at the CPC podcast. So I would recommend you follow me, so you can obviously vote in next week's man of match poll and have your opinion heard. But also, much like the Crystal Palace account, I do regularly update with the latest news. So if you do want to keep up to date with all things Palace, then obviously my account is another way which you can do that. But obviously the 4 nominations for this week's man of match were Wayne Hennessy, Joe Ward, Jeffrey Schlupp and local Remy. So certainly these 4 players, in my opinion, were the best 4. But considering we had a pretty decent performance against Everton, there was a few plays that maybe could have been in there instead. But obviously I narrowed it down to these guys, and most people agreed, obviously judging by how many people voted in the poll. But obviously just to go through the results, in 4th place with 7% of the votes was Joe Ward. Then in 3rd place with 27% of the votes was Loic Remy. Closely followed up with 30% of the votes in 2nd place was Wayne Hennessy, which means the winner of this week's Man of the Match poll for the game against Everton was Jeffrey Schlupp, the new signing, with 36% of the votes. So congratulations, Jeffrey. You don't get a trophy or a certificate, but you do get my sincere congratulations on what was a solid debut for you. And obviously because you went off injured, we conceded the goal, so it just shows how crucial you were for the game. But just, you know, I'm just going to go through each of the 4 players, why I've put them on the shortlist. You know, Wayne Hennessy is quite clear, 30% of the votes. Quite a lot of people voted for him. You know, I thought he put in an excellent performance between the sticks. You know, he made many crucial saves which kept us in the game, and if it weren't for these saves, we could have lost maybe 4-0 like Man City did. Obviously Joe Ward as well, only 7% of people voted for him, but that's purely because, not because his performance was any worse, it's purely because, you know, these players were better. Obviously he covered a lot of ground, obviously playing in that new sort of wing back role, which he isn't really used to. You know, he was good offensively, got forward, tried to get crosses in, also very good defensively, you know, making tackles, tracking back, and he handled the threat of Morales and Baines well. So them 2 players he was told to mark, he marked them very well. Obviously Jeffrey Schlupp obviously won the Twitter poll. You know, I thought he showed quite great tenacity. You know, he kept Coleman quiet, and he used his pace good offensively. So we talk about wing backs having pace. Jeffrey Schlupp used his pace to get forward, to try and get crosses in, try to cut inside, and also to defend. So when obviously Everton are on a counter attack, they've got fast players. You know, Schlupp uses his pace to track back in that wing back role to do his defensive duties as well. And I think really one of the reasons he won the Twitter poll is mainly because of the tenacity he showed. And obviously Loic Remy, you know, played one of his first, I believe it was, his 2nd league game or whatever he's played for Palace. You know, I thought he showed great pace. You know, he linked up well with Benteke. He was good at crossing, found a few decent crosses to Benteke, and also he's shooting as well. He's one of these players who isn't scared to shoot, and obviously he showed that in this game. And certainly all 4 of these players do deserve the Man of the Match shortlist, to be on the shortlist, because they all had a massive influence on the game, and most people agreed with me. So do comment below with what you think, whether you think there should be another player on the shortlist, whether you agree with the player I'm about to give my Man of the Match to. So obviously Jeffrey Schlupp won the Twitter poll, and actually I'm going to go with the Twitter poll again. So congratulations, Jeffrey. You win my own personal Man of the Match award, and the only reason I'm going to give it to you more than any of the other players is because of your tenacity, the fact that you made such a big impact on the game, and that impact was so apparent that when Everton scored, that was the time when we were down to 10 men and you were the player down injured. So that alone, even though you could see that as a bad thing, that actually highlights how good of a performance Jeffrey Schlupp had, the fact that when he went off injured and we were down to 10 men, that's when we conceded. So that's why I'm going to give it to him, purely because of obviously the amount of impact he had. So now you've heard my match report, player rankings and my Man of the Match. That concludes this week's podcast. Now I've got an exclusive interview with Sam Allardyce and Jeffrey Schlupp following the game.
Jeff, home debut today. First of all, just for you, how was the game?
Yeah, obviously it was a tough one, and we knew it was going to be a tough one. But you know, it's been a while since I've played the full 90 minutes in the Premier League. But you know, I definitely enjoyed it, and you know, the crowd was roaring, of course, and you know, made me feel at home. And
up until the goal, it was a good defensive performance, wasn't it?
Yeah, I'm afraid it's just how it's been going for us lately. But you know, it's just one of those things. You know, we've got a player down. At the end of the day, you know, the ref's got to stop the play, but he's not, and we've gone and conceded the goal. But you know, there's obviously plenty of positives to take from that game. You know, we created a lot, and we look dangerous going forward. So we've got to take that into the next game, and you know, start picking up some points.
And as you said, you were down injured. What's the latest on that? Just cramp?
Yeah, it was cramp, but you know, my leg locked up, and basically couldn't move. You know, I'm on the pitch, the ball's gone out of play, but you know, the ref's obviously not seeing it, or I don't know, but he's not stopped the game for some reason. But you know, like I said, it was a cramp. You know, he's not stopped the game, and they've gone on to score. So you know, you've just got to take on the chin, I'm afraid, and move on.
Coming in as an outsider into the group, is confidence still high amongst everyone that you can get moving up the table?
Yeah, I mean, you know, I'm sure most people in the team have been in a sticky situation like this before, and you know, we know what it takes to get out of it, and you know, we've got to keep our heads. You know, the game's gone now. We've got to look forward to the next game and put things right. You know.
Sam, looked for so long like it was going to be a great defensive performance. Is it all the more galling that the goal came when we had a player down injured?
Yeah, and it was Schlupp who's got caught with an injury, and it's Simon Coleman who was marking that scores, unfortunately for us, but we could have done a little better in that situation. Unfortunately, we didn't. I think it's suspiciously offside as well. So while we could have done a bit better, it also the linesman might have actually put his flag up looking across that line there, because he looks offside when he receives the ball, but it's not to be. And when you're like where you are at this moment in time, everything like that seems to go against you. So, but a good debut for Jeffrey Schlupp. I think good performance overall against what we know is a very good side, Everton, and had our own chances. And of course, the one real big chance in the second half for us was a super save by the goalkeeper when I think it was Scott Dan or one of our centre backs headed it, and a brilliant save. So I wasn't happy with the draw. Obviously, it would have been a great result for us, and sort of been exceptionally pleased about getting a clean sheet, which would have been the first one for a long time, but it wasn't to be, and we're very disappointed on the effort we put in. And I think that with the players, there's a lot of positives and a lot we can continue to work at and hopefully get better and better and better and turn results around.
A different system today with the three centre backs. You pleased with the way they coped with that?
Yeah, I thought they were excellent today. You know, you got Barkley, Morelos, Lukaku, you know, and you saw what they did to Manchester City last week. Exactly the same team that played Man City. Found it difficult to break us down today, and a goalkeeper in good form. When he needed him, he made some good saves. So, you know, we were really put in a solid defensive performance, and I just wanted that clean sheet today, you know, for us all. But unfortunately, it wasn't to be, and we can't really point the finger at ourselves too much, like I said, because we had a player off the pitch. The referee decided not to stop the game, so we couldn't get a sub on, and they took advantage of it, I suppose, in the end.
And finally, have we got an update on Jeffrey's injury?
It's only cramp, I think, because he's hasn't played that much this season for Leicester, and getting to the pace and the throws of a game, and obviously just caught him out with that great run down the left-hand side. So you know, it's hard to take today, but you know, we live to fight another day, and like I said, a lot of positives for me to try and move on. A flexibility in the side today, because it got thrown a system that matched up Everton's and coped with it very well and looked very positive going forward as well. So Christian's early chance at the bar, great header, and like I said, the real chance off the free kick that Mayer goes 1-0 in front. And then I don't think we'd have lost the game from there, but for us it's a big disappointment.
So there you have it. Now you've heard what Sam Allardyce and Jeffrey Schlupp had to say after the game. That concludes this week's podcast for the game against Everton. But make sure to comment next week for my post-match review of the game against Manchester City. So thanks for listening, and remember to up the Palace.